Which brings me to the schedule release for the ACC for 2025. We will pull this up. And of course, it starts out with a non-conference game that has got to take everybody by storm in regards to from a national perspective. And we've got some ads that we need to kick out of the way before we go there. But bingo. So if we blow this up, we've got this mammoth. And this is another great thing about the opening of college football is that wraparound weekend where it starts on Thursday. And the more college football you can watch, the better, because obviously everybody's playing on Saturday throughout most of the rest of the season for the most part. And so it's difficult to watch everything you want to see, but a couple games on Thursday, a couple games on Friday into Saturday, Sunday game, Monday game, and Notre Dame and Miami on a Sunday night.
Sunday night, August 31st, which everybody say it with me, my cousin's birthday yet again. For the opener. It was Saturday this past year. It's Sunday this upcoming year. 7:30 p.m. ABC National TV. This is the spotlight game of week one during Labor Day weekend. It, has been on the schedule for years. We have the rotating agreement with, we as in the ACC has the rotating agreement with Notre Dame, where they're not a member, but they play member schools to help fill out their independent schedule. So this has been known for a good long time. The other thing off the top that you'll notice, there are 8 home games this year, as opposed to the usual 6, maybe 7, just because of the way that, things went. So, you get the USF series, which was not scheduled. So that one was like a late addition into the scheduling. Usually these are scheduled 5 and 7 years out. That was only a couple of years in front of when those are being played. Then you get the return game on September 20th of the home and home against the Florida Gators. Also, and then you're going to have your home game against your HBCU or FCS sacrificial lamb. So the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats are going to come on down. So yeah, in your first 4 weeks, again, those are your non-conference: Notre Dame, Bethune-Cookman, USF, and Florida in that order. Bookend of the marquee games. And this, and I in the piece that Mark is zoomed in on, this is on stateoftheu.com, where I put up all of the stuff for the schedule release. I wrote in there and said, this is the non-conference of dreams for those people who said Miami wasn't playing anybody in the past, right? So like last year, we played Florida. Cool. They're a major brand. They were terrible at the beginning of the season, and we blew them out. Then we played Bethune. We played Ball State. We played FAMU. We played Ball State, who ended up being like 129th out of 134, right, in the FCS. So one of the worst FCS teams you could play. And then we went to USF. So people were saying, well, you only have one. I would like to see more. I want it to be scheduled like it's my college football 2025 dynasty, where I go on the road to the top 4 toughest places to play every year, beat all those top teams, and then I walk through the conference for a championship. This is more along those lines. You get Notre Dame, who just played for a national championship, and a Florida team that is usually tough. They're if nothing else, they are a talented team. And they have DJ Lagway with another year. And that, even when I said it a year ago, that I thought that he would potentially be the better option for Florida to compete against Miami, he is unquestionably their starting quarterback this year, and a very talented player as well. So that's your first 4 games of the year. And then we get to the shenanigans. So I want to say again, or bring back up a thing that's also in this piece. There is an extra weekend in the September, October, November quarter of the year. Usually there are 12 weekends, and then you start in August. So that's 13 weekends to play 12 games. That's why usually each team gets 1 bye week. With the same 13 weeks, and there's 5 weekends in November, as you see on the screen there, that means that there's 13 weeks there. You start in August, that's 14 weeks. So there are 14 weeks to play 12. So every team gets 2 bye weeks. When are Miami's bye weeks? After Florida and then after Florida State. So sandwiching Florida State, weeks 5 and 7 are Miami's 2 bye weeks. The ACC continues to do this asinine bullshit with Miami scheduling. There's no reason we need to have another bye week after Florida State. And I know people are going to say, Cam, they did the same thing to Duke and to North Carolina around one of the games in their schedule. I forget who or whatever, but they also have 2 byes in 3, or, bye game bye, 2 byes in 3 weeks. I don't care about any of those other teams. I was hopeful because I tweeted it out. I was looking at this to prepare over the weekend because the ACC announced the week 1 games on Thursday of last week. Then they released the ACC openers for every team on Friday, and then they released the full schedule on Monday. And as I was preparing and pre-writing my article, I was like, wait, this is when I counted the weeks. I was like, oh my god, everybody gets 2 bye weeks. This is great. We can play. Shout out to Moses Malone, fo. You know what I mean? And then have 4 bye, 4, and then whatever. But yeah, again, what are we doing? And it's just Miami and Duke and Carolina, but teams I don't care about. But still, it's a very few teams that have their byes in basically right next to each other, which is stupid, but whatever. So the ACC opener on Saturday, October 4th in Tallahassee against Florida State. So you're also in 3 weeks going to have your both big rivals. Well, and in the first 6 weeks, you have Notre Dame, Florida, and Florida State. Regardless of the quality and caliber of team, those are 3 big games in your first 5. Then a bye week, and then a Friday, that is correct, a Friday night game against Louisville. I hate Friday games because you can't really recruit. I wish we had a Thursday home game, and then the coaches could be out recruiting on the Friday because most everybody plays on Fridays, but whatever. Then Stanford makes their first trip to Hard Rock the next week. Then we finally leave the state of Florida for the first time in November to go to SMU. Then I need some get back against Syracuse November 8th, CJ Bailey and the NC State Wolfpack on the 15th. And it's crazy to me that we only have 4 away games, and half of our away games are in the last 2 weeks of the year. Now, I knew, when I saw what the matchups were on paper before they even got placed, I knew in my heart of hearts, and I even tweeted it out during the announcement special. I said, we're ending the year on the road in Pittsburgh Thanksgiving weekend. That's set it and forget it. I mean, there's no question about that. But then we have Virginia Tech the week before that. So, overall, the non-conference is tougher than last year because, like I said, you're replacing one of the worst teams in FBS football with Notre Dame, who played for a national championship. Whatever you feel about them, that is in a massive increase in quality over what Ball State presented. You have USF year over year. If they play better next in 25 than they played in 24, that singular game is, I would say maybe it's about the same because they were keyed up and, it was 15-14 before that cover 2 hole shot before the half, in Tampa last year. Bethune, whatever. And then Florida, if they have improvement year over year, that game is harder now than last year. So, yeah, the non-conference is harder. And I think the conference schedule is comparable to last year, to 2024, except for then you end on the road in Lane Stadium and at Pittsburgh, which can go sideways. So overall, yeah, I think that this is a moderately harder schedule. You do have the 8 home games. I hope to see you all out there, and I will be letting you know, especially that week of November 15th, y'all better come out because there were a lot of empty parking spots and a lot of walking around room in the tailgate area and all kinds of stuff for senior day last year against Wake Forest because y'all didn't want to come out. So, everybody wants to complain about there not being football. There's plenty of home football for you in the season upcoming. And those are my thoughts about it.
Here's where I'm going to go. But before we do that, let's get to the segment as sponsored by Falconer TRX with the super sticker with the looks like Microwave Dynasty is building a smoker. The bye weeks are too close together.
Yep.
We saw that as
Facts.
well. Falconer with this one. Sunday night beatdown of Notre Dame will be epic. Buy tickets now.
Yeah. And then Mark Richt also was talking his shit on the announcement show because he was like, yeah, you remember the last time that Notre Dame came down there in 2017? And you know who coached them? I did. You know where I went to school? Miami. And you know what we did to them? 41-8. In that, like, I was like, like retired Mark Richt. I was
You're
like,
supposed to be a network guy.
Yeah, hey,
Yeah.
but he was just like, I remember because I was the coach and I'm an alum and I hate those guys and this is what we did. And I was like, go off then, kid. So, yeah, that's going to be, that place is going to be rocking. Like, if you, throughout the year, that USF game, there's going to be plenty of people who either don't show up or show up late and they still get a good parking spot. They're not going to walk that far. Do not try to do that on August the 31st. Ladies and gentlemen, get there early, prepare, plan, all of that stuff because the place is going to be packed out on Labor Day Sunday night.
So anytime I check out schedules, I check out a few things. So first and foremost, we go to the out of conference. So credit Miami here. So most programs across the country playing in the Power Five take this approach. Okay, go out and schedule a Power Five opponent. We're doing our due diligence. That's what's required of us, whether we've got 3 non-conference games as they do in the SEC, or the Big Ten and the Big 12, or 4 games in the ACC and the SEC. Generally, if you look across those teams, almost everyone plays one big opponent. Then the other 3 or 2 games are Group of 5 FCS. Now you will have your situations, most notably with a couple teams in the ACC and the SEC that have that crossover, Florida State, Florida rivalry and such, Louisville and Kentucky, South Carolina and Clemson, where some of them will go out like a Clemson did last year. They played Georgia at the beginning, South Carolina at the end, and they got a difficult double dip there. You've got your USC, who I always have respected them because they will go out, boom, take on an LSU, and they always play Notre Dame. Then you've got your schools that wimp out. I have noted this a number of times. Baylor has not played a ranked non-conference opponent since 1997.
Woo. What a stat. My goodness.
So there's some schools like that. Ohio State was one of those schools this year. Now, my excuse will be they had Washington on the schedule when Washington joined the Big Ten. Then they switched that out. And so they played 3 cupcakes. Michigan played 3 cupcakes the 2 years before that. Anyway, but by and large, but then I love it from the standpoint of, yes, just the viewing pleasure of those teams. And Miami's one of them this year that is playing 2 major brands. I love it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, and they're both at home, which is great for, I know that a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to buy season tickets, or what does the home schedule look like? Brother, sister, you're getting Notre Dame, Florida, Louisville, Syracuse, and NC State. And the bonus of 3 other, like those are 5. That's if you had a 5-game home schedule, those 5 games are enough. And on top of that, you get Bethune, USF, and Stanford. Come on, man. Like, not sponsored by the athletic department or the ticket department or anything, but just like, bro, I mean, like, guys, what are we talking about? Like, yeah, like this is, yeah.
So the next place I go with the schedules, especially since these conferences have expanded to be so large, there is a greater disparity between schedules within a conference than ever before.
Yep.
Because if you do the math, we got 17 teams. Therefore, you've got 16 possible opponents. You only play 8, so you miss 8 in the conference. And so, for example, I did a breakdown on Texas and Oklahoma at the start of this season because I in reviewing the schedules, I'm like, man, this is screwed up. Look at this. And I did the math. Texas is playing teams in the SEC this past season that won 35% of their games the year before, and Oklahoma is playing teams that won 65% of their games. Just completely, just the inequity just drives me
Yeah,
crazy. So
it's
I'm
out of
looking at
balance.
Miami and I'm thinking, and another caveat to this is we tend to, or at least I do, and I think most college football fans do this,
Mm.
we tend to think that teams are going to stay the same generally. Their quality of play, and they do to an extent. But there's obviously drop off and their unexpected teams that emerge and so forth. But what stands out in the conference schedule? No Clemson, so that's an obvious one. But I think other than that, it's a pretty tough ACC schedule because you miss a lot of weaklings.
Yeah.
Virginia, there's no Virginia. There's no Wake. They've been awful for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Cal. There's
Mm-hmm.
no Boston College is marginal. They're in the middle of the pack. North Carolina, who knows about them? They weren't very good last year, but they got Bill on board.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Tech's obviously been a thorn in the side. There's no Georgia Tech this year, and they're decent. But Clemson's the only, if SMU continues to play as well as they did, I don't know if that's a 1-year wonder. Who knows? But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a slightly tougher than middle of the road AC, maybe even more than that. A fairly tough ACC schedule.
Yeah. I mean, if you like going into the year or like looking at right now, it's reasonable to think that like your top 2 or 3 teams will be Clemson, Miami, and SMU. Obviously, Miami cannot play themselves. I mean, they will at the spring game, you know what I mean? But so you're playing one of the other 2 top teams, and to your point, not even anything else, but missing a lot of the bottom feeders. So you're playing a lot of the other teams of some kind of quality. In general, Georgia Tech and North Carolina State more or less are interchangeable in that, upper part of the middle tier there. But yeah, so that's not like a step down. Virginia Tech, always going to be tough. Pitt on the road, always going to be tough. Louisville, tough. Syracuse, clearly tough. Florida State, we'll see, but I think that that's going to be more towards competitive than not. I don't want it to be, but I think that they could find a way to do it, especially if they have that little Smurf running around at quarterback this next year. And then Stanford, they find ways to stay in games. So yeah, I definitely think that this is one of the top probably 4 toughest ACC schedules possible. But that's fine. We just got to go out there and do the things we need to do.